What do famous authors and Brooklyn Heights have in common? Well, you'll find out as I take you on a walk down memory lane through the historic homes of these famous authors who we know and have loved and also made headlines in the Heights press over the past 75 years.
Brooklyn Heights has always been a neighborhood that offers beauty, quiet, privacy, tradition, and a sense of community.
I think that authors liked the fact that the Heights was in the city but not of the city, that it was a quiet place where they could work. It was less expensive than Manhattan.
Neighbors would actually bump into each other on the street and realize that they had a lot more in common besides the neighborhood. Literature and art are the shoestrings that tie Brooklyn Heights together.
Novelist Thomas Wolfe lived in 2 rooms on the 4th floor apartment at 5 Montague Terrace. It was here the novel of Time and the River was penned. Besides writing, Wolfe also had to deal with a certain ardent fan.
At the time he lived in the Heights, Schaefer, for the first time as a young man, writing for the Brooklyn Eagle, Thomas Wolfe lived here as well. And Schaefer almost stalked him. He wrote him letters of, expressing his admiration and saying that he'd like to meet him. And one day, Schaefer walked up to him on the street and said, "Hello," and Wolfe said, "Are you Schaefer?" Meaning, you're the guy that's been writing letters to me. And he more or less at that moment said, "Well, let's go, grab a dinner."
And Schaefer too had his own surprises. The popular glossy Vanity Fair had a section on caricatures titled Impossible Interviews that featured quirky celebrity sketches offering advice. Doja Hasty reads from the original article in which Schaefer recollected the time he had his real-life impossible interview moment.
So when I went to Ralston's house, it says Schaefer, when I went to Ralston's house to this party, I did not expect to meet and see Marilyn Monroe, but she was there because she was a friend of Ralston. So when I walked into the apartment, which was at 20 Remsen Street, I saw Marilyn Monroe sitting with Arthur Miller, and I thought, impossible interview.
Norman Mailer, author of the best-selling 1948 novel The Naked and the Dead, found the Heights so inspiring that he stayed in the neighborhood, moving from 128 Willow Street to Pierpont Street in 1943, where he shared a brownstone building with Pulitzer playwright Arthur Miller, author of the 1949 Death of a Salesman.
I did meet Norman Miller once when he was very drunk at a party. And he came up to me and he was so impressed that I was from Finland and he wanted to embrace me. Remembered how the Finns had fought against the Russians in the Winter War of 1939 to 40. And then he went off into a bathroom and smoked some pot.
Brooklyn Heights was beginning to take true form as a literary nexus and artistically bound community. Norman Ralston, who authored 12 books including Under the Boardwalk in 1963 and several plays, was a long-time resident of an apartment on Schermerhorn Street. He later subletted his 20 Remsen Street nest to fellow author Norman Mailer.
Ralston got to know the branch manager and arranged for himself to be able to go down to the vault, to one of the rooms where people would go for privacy to examine the contents of their safe deposit boxes. And he was allowed to write there, to sit there and write his poetry or his next novel. And he said, I'll read you the quote from the article we did on him. He said, "It was quiet, it was neat, and how lovely to be surrounded by all that money."
The literary community needed a social melting pot,
which was in fact the site behind me at 97 Columbia Heights.
This was once the famous Hotel Margaret, built in 1888, and was home to H.G. Wells, Ellen Terry, and Ernest Hemingway. The building burnt down in 1980 during a restoration.
Prior to the creation of our busy Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, in the 40s and 50s, 7 Meadow Street was perhaps the most prominent hangout spot for prized creatives, from W.H. Auden to Salvador Dali.
Brooklyn Heights is a treasure trove of artistic history. Join us each week as the Brooklyn Eagle takes a look at 75 years of the Heights Press and the stories that left an indelible mark on residents, readers, and newbies to the neighborhood. For the Brooklyn Daily Eagle, I'm Dipti Kumar.